Okay, let's get started. So a huge thank you for joining, everyone, and so exciting to see so many familiar names and a few new people here. Those of you that don't know me and those of you that do, I'm Amelia. I'm one of the community coordinators for Beyond. And most of you will know by now that Beyond is a programme of free and funded design and digital training, which has been designed kind of specifically for this moment in the crisis to help you adapt your services, think about digital skills and things like that. Unbelievably, this is the very last one of this design thinking training five-parter. So really excited to be here today, but kind of tinged a little bit with a bit of sadness that we won't be here every Tuesday with you all having interesting conversations and learning a lot. Today is going to be a real bringing together of a lot of the things that you've learned over the last few weeks with the amazing Rebecca, who is a service designer. She's also done some coaching for us on Beyond, so she's a big part of the Beyond family. This is going to be about design and digital roadmaps to adapting your services, so really thinking about the practical steps to making it happen and getting it done. Just a few little reminders. So you obviously can't be seen, which is really sad because I don't know what any of you look like, but we would love to hear from you on the chat function. So please make sure you kind of talk to us, you ask us questions, you tell us what's interesting or what you agree with or what you've had experiences of. And please make sure that you use all panelists and attendees in the drop-down menu so that we can see it from you and everybody else can see it from you as well. And we're going to answer a few questions. We'll try and fit in as many as possible. We don't always get to all of them, but please feel free to use the Q&A function to let us know what you're interested in knowing more about, and then I can talk to Rebecca about them later on in the training. And then those of you that joined us by now will know that we're trying to improve our accessibility, and so we've got a whole bunch of support that's available. Really particular for this session, there's closed captions that are turned on, so you should be able to turn those on so that you can see what Rebecca's saying in words on your screen at the same time as hearing her talk through them. But please let me know if you've got any problems or any technical issues. I'll be in the chat, I'll be talking to you all there, and I'll be available if you need any help. Last thing to say is that this session is going to be recorded and it will be available on the Beyond site, so joinbeyond.org, along with the slides and potentially some templates from today. So you'll be able to access all of it there afterwards. So for now, you can just relax, take it in and enjoy. Thanks so much, Rebecca. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Amelia. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here today. How are you? I hope you're well and enjoying this little flush of spring that we're having. I'm Rebecca, and in today's final session, I'll be talking you through how to take your ideas to the next level using a design roadmap. So, as you know, I can't hear or see you, so please interact with me or Amelia in the chat and the Q&A as we go. And as a way to kind of show that you're agreeing or nodding, just type in +1 into the chat every time I say something that you're kind of vibing with. And that helps me to feel like I'm not speaking into nothingness. So if you don't have one already, now's the moment to grab a pen and paper. There will be opportunities to follow along with the activities later on in the training. So today is going to be less about full lift off and launch and implementation. It's going to be a little bit more like this. So it's all about taking practical methods and showing you some templates so you can plan what happens after you've tested your idea. And my main message for you today is all about starting small, starting lean, and holding your plans really lightly. It's been such an incredibly hard year, and we're all a bit tired and stretched, and we all need a good reminder to take things one step at a time. So who am I? I'm Rebecca Birch. I'm a design thinking consultant and creator and also a coach, and I support charities, government organisations and commercial services to adopt human-centred design in their strategy, their culture and their ways of working. And these are just some of the lovely organisations that I get to work with, a real mix. I love to keep learning and pushing myself. So sometimes I work in-house, sometimes I work for myself, and sometimes I work for an agency. And all my work revolves around designing for better relationships and connections. So this is just a few pictures to sum up my work. So when I'm not out in the woods with my binoculars, because I'm a real bird watching geek, I'm running design thinking training or peer learning training, creating wellbeing offers for parents, running retreats sometimes, and helping charities take a more relational approach to their work. I work across a huge range of projects and programs and products, but I use design thinking as an anchor in pretty much everything that I do. It's my fail-safe. I really hope that through this series of training that you're finding it equally as useful as I have through my career. I've also been really lucky over the last 6 months or so to support early years charities through the Beyond Huddles. Some of you might be here today, so hello if you are. I've learned so much from these charities already and that have been involved in that. And I hope even on today's training that I hope to have an opportunity to learn from you a little bit too. So enough about me. How about you? I can't see your faces or hear you, but I'd love to know who's in the room. Tell me, what's your name and where do you come from? Go ahead and put your name, role or whereabouts in the chat if you haven't already. Hello Jackie, hello Sadaf, hello Amber, hello Maxine, hey Layla, hey Phil. Great to see you all here today. Hey Gareth. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to take you through 3 things today. First is why and when to make your plans public. The second is around creating a light and lean roadmap. And the third is all about sustaining a design approach into launch. Template-wise, I'll be running you through how to create a user journey map today. It's worth saying at this point that there's loads of other complementary ways to make things public early and to roadmap, you know, prioritisation matrices, that's a hard word to say, blogging, or a near to real prototype of your service. I don't have time to talk about them all today, but Amelia's going to drop the link to the map in the chat, hopefully now. It's a Google Slides template, but you can also download it as a PowerPoint if that works better for you. So before we get into the chunky bit of the training, let's recap a bit about what we've heard so far from our other trainers on the series, because it's really important to remember that design thinking doesn't stop as you approach launch. So during the first training, Teo said, design thinking is a mindset, not just a process. And then in week 2 on a user research training, Fan Sissoko said, people aren't hard to find, organisations are. And then during the third training, Teo reminded us that it was really important to springboard to new ideas and widen your thinking using a how might we framework. And then during the fourth training, Louise said, testing your ideas is not getting somebody to say, great job. You must be prepared to challenge your assumptions and change your idea. So following on really nicely from Louise's prototyping training last week, you'll remember that we are here in the grey box on the left. And right now we're talking about how to get ready for a small, low fidelity pilot. So I'll use an example here to kind of illustrate what these slightly jargony words really mean. So imagine that I'm embarking on a new mince pie business ready for the next festive season. And I happen to think that raisins are the devil's food. And I want to market a raisin-free version ready for the next season. So in this example, you can see on this image here, my prototypes are my experiments in the kitchen, my recipe experiments, my brand experiments. I'm trying multiple avenues for my delicious pies, and I've got £500, 2 weeks, and some friends and neighbours and my fellow raisin-free followers. So here I really want to find out whether or not people really just want the thing. Is it desirable? Am I on the right track? So then moving to piloting, once I feel really confident that I am on the right track and people do want it, I'm trying just 2 of my recipes, my best, most popular recipes. I've got £1,000 and I do it all myself with some help from a friend. Here I'm wanting to know whether or not people like it and does the recipe and the bones of the business work. So I'm asking for feedback and tweaking and improving as I go. Again, trying to feel confident that the business is in a good stage to kind of get to this MVP stage. So my MVP happens as we run up to Christmas this year. I launched my best recipe and my updated brand, and I partner with a cafe, and I invest £3,000 on a really good quality brand, a kitchen hire and a snazzy packaging, little branding thing, and do my marketing and baking myself. So I run this for 6 months and I keep asking for feedback from both customers and from the cafe, and I start to make plans for further partnerships. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a broken down idea of what we mean by prototyping, by piloting, and by MVP. So where are we in the double diamond? So if this is still new to you right now, then you just haven't been following along. No, I'm joking. You'll remember that we understand the why, the behaviours and needs and motivations in the first 2 phases of the diamond. And we really get to the problem, and then we understand the what in the second phase. So developing concepts and experiments and lots of learning by doing. So today we are in the deliver phase. And this is all about how to get your work out into the real world. And this is usually pre-pilot. So making sure that you've tested your assumptions and ironed out your biggest risks. So why should you get your ideas out into the world quickly? Well, really simply, it just costs too much not to. It costs time, resource, energy, engagement. And the cost of mistakes is your best argument if you're struggling to convince people to start small. If you've got colleagues or a leader that just really wants to get on with things and is quite gung-ho, this is a really great argument for you. And again, to add to the argument, here's some really unfortunate but high profile examples of why it's important to make things public early and to test your assumptions. So in quite a lot of these examples, the core concept and the underlying understanding of people's needs was incomplete before moving into testing. So in others, the usability or the accessibility was incomplete before launch. And it's really never too late to go back a step, as these examples highlight to us, because rescuing is just much more difficult than designing from the start, and the delivery phase is no exception. So really try to encourage kind of threading this mindset through into launch. So hopefully you don't need much more convincing by now, but in case you do, we put things out into the world early for the following reasons. So especially as we're getting our new roadmap from the government, the landscape's shifting really fast and people's needs have been changing a lot over the last year. Another really great reason is to learn from feedback. Really advocate for the idea of failing sooner and succeeding earlier, so that you don't waste time, waste money. Making things public early can really help with helping everyone to see the full picture, and it also helps to attract partners and those early adopters. And overall, it's just less risk, less cost, less waste, less burnout. So I really think that we need to be taking this approach more rather than less right now, even though we're feeling really stretched and under-resourced. So when do we make our roadmap? So a really good time to make your roadmap is after you're confident that both people want it and like it. That's when you can start doing that testing, whether or not people can really use it. So alongside some other techniques I mentioned earlier, a really good roadmap will help you to make sure that your really exciting, really well-researched idea doesn't go a bit weird as you approach your launch. So I don't know if anybody is familiar with this kind of situation, where you've got a really brilliant idea, you've thought it through, everyone's really on board, and then when you get into the developing and testing and even launching it, it goes a bit funny. And it doesn't really look anything like how you had it mapped out in your head when you were meeting with colleagues. Give me a +1 if this resonates for you. So I'd really love to hear from you now, as you've heard from me for a while. I'm curious, what are some of the reasons that ideas struggle or lose engagements once they're out in the world, from your perspective? I'd love to know in the chat what you think. Maxine saying, trying to do too many things for too broad an audience. Absolutely. People are losing interest. Yeah. We want parents to lead, but it's hard to keep them engaged. That's particularly difficult at the time, at this moment in history. Not having design or tech expertise. Yeah. Losing momentum because people get tired. Absolutely. Not pitching to the right audience. It can be hard work to change behaviours. Yeah. Steering the ship and keeping everyone on board throughout. Can be lonely, eh? Can be quite frustrating. People have got lots going on. And the creative process is more interesting. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Phil. It's much far more fun just to talk about ideas than to get into the nitty gritty of what's going to really work. Difficulty promoting, yeah. And moving on to something else rather than focusing, yeah, absolutely. Like, oh, there's a shiny thing over there. All really normal human things for us to do. Thank you, everyone. Stacey's plus warning, like a crazy thing. Thank you, everyone. Okay. So let's talk roadmaps then. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to be going through the user journey map. It's a bit of a light blueprint if you've come across that before. So grab your pen and paper and I'll invite you to follow along with me in a sec. This is a light touch demo, so don't worry if you don't get it all down the first time. I invite you just to come back to this in your own time and use today just as a way to get familiarised with the tool. So what makes for a good roadmap? I don't know if anybody's familiar with this, but I've come across it so many times in my work at charities, big and small. It's the big spreadsheet of doom where you've got everything planned out for the next year and you spend 6 months working on it, and then it gets to delivery or implementation and you haven't looked at it for 6 months. So what I'm trying to encourage is trying to create a really light, easy to update, flexible, shareable and accessible roadmap. One that just keeps living, keeps being updated, and that everybody's still on board with as you move along. And I really, really strongly advocate for cloud collaboration tools. I don't think anybody needs persuading of these now we've had a year of remote working. But collaborating with a cross-section of people delivering your service online or wherever you come together, using PowerPoint online or Google Slides or Miro or any other whiteboards, or simply, using post-its and taking photos and inviting colleagues and people that are testing your roadmap to contribute, can be really, really beneficial. So what's a user journey map? A user journey map is a visual plan and it helps people who use and deliver your service to receive a great experience. Here is the template. I know at first glance it can be a bit intimidating, but we'll break it down into sections together. So the best way of explaining a user journey map or a blueprint is to think of a theatre. Sorry for you West End or theatre lovers to bring this as an example, but it's the best one that I have. So we think of the front stage first, and that's everything that happens in front of the curtain. So that includes not just the audience, but also the performers and the theatre staff. So everything that happens in front of the curtain is the front stage. And then behind the curtain, you've got the backstage. So that's the workings of the theatre, the lighting, the technical aspects, bookings, and everyone running around in black clothes. So think about your service, your offer, your programme. What happens in the front stage, in front of the curtains, and who's involved? What happens in the backstage and who's involved? So you might want to just note those things down on your pen and paper. So here's the template again. Everything in the front stage is in orange, and everything in the back stage is purple. So we're focusing mainly on the front stage here. So again, just the behind the curtain actions that I don't see but all support me having a smooth experience is the purple. So the front stage would be if I'm going to Pret. Oh, I dream about Pret actually sometimes. But I'm going to Pret and I see the tasty products and the coffee menu and the tills and the friendly staff taking my order. That's all the front stage. And then what I don't see is the stock check system, the staff rota, or the weekly orders, and that's the backstage. Blueprint or user journey map's got 3 functions: demonstrate, improve, or radically rethink. So you might have a service or a product or a program that's working really, really well, and you want to visualize it so you can replicate it or scale it or explain how it works to funders. Or you might want to map your service in order to see if there are gaps or pain points or things that need redesigning. Or you might want to radically rethink what you're doing, which is what a lot of us have been doing over the last year, as we haven't been able to see people face to face. So quite often you'll come into this mapping process hoping to be able to demonstrate what you're doing. But quite often you'll find that you will need to improve things or radically rethink once you've mapped things, because you'll just notice things you've not noticed before. Colleagues will notice things, or people using your service, when they have a look at it, will give you feedback. But don't worry about that. It's much better that you realise what the gaps are for improvement or rethinking now, rather than when the service is fully operational. Okay, are we ready to have a go? So we're going to have a go at drafting one together. Plus one me if you're ready with your pen and paper, and we'll go through each section one at a time. So first off, let's define what we are mapping using the grey box at the top. So we're going to use these kind of prompts. So what's the thing, what's the audience, what's the desired experience, and what the offers and the intended outcomes or impact. So to illustrate what I'm talking about, I've chosen a simple example from some work that I did early in the summer with Deeper. Deeper supports organisations to bring human connection into digital services. We were approached by Leicestershire-based charity Hospice Hope, who deliver day respite to older people. And like so many of us did earlier this year, they needed help with designing their first online version of their service. So together we decided to call the first online cafe the Magic Memories Cafe. Cheesy, but it worked. And this was all based on our research about the power of shared memories to boost human connection. So this is how we filled in our what is it template. So it's a drop-in day respite group for vulnerable older people who previously met face-to-face to relax, exercise, play games, etc., through facilitated group activities and one-to-one therapy sessions in order to reduce social isolation and improve well-being. So these are some of the needs that we were trying to meet through this new version of the day respite service. I need something to look forward to, I need to feel welcomed, I need to have some therapeutic me time, I need the option to just be, etc. So have a go at completing your version now on your pen and paper. So what's your thing? What's the audience? What's the desired experience? What service offer are you giving that experience through? And what's the impact or the outcome? So I'm just going to put some music on and you can have a go at completing yours now. finished there, so feel free to share it in the chat, inspire other people, or let us know what you're up to. I'm going to give you just a few more moments on this. Okay, great job. Don't worry if you haven't got it down perfectly. You can go back to this later. All right. So next, we're going to talk about the phases of engagement. So this is all about describing when the user is first aware of the service right through until they exit or advocate for the service. So you can see here, the purple arrow is pointing to some grey boxes, and these are our phases. So set up, aware, wanting to engage, able to engage, first engagement, sustaining engagement, and exit or become advocate. So you can leave them like that, or you might want to make them specific to your own service. So here we laid out an example for the Magic Memories Cafe for Hospice Hope. Pretty simple, really. We chose to map our phases over a week before, a day before, an hour before, start, during, end, and a day after the online day respite service. So have a think about a service that you are confident to map using this tool. What would the phases of engagement be on your user journey map? I'll give you 2 minutes to do this again on your paper, put some music on, grab your paper, turn it landscape, and across the length, draft your phases of your service across time. And I'll just give you a couple of moments for that. So again, if anybody's been speedy and fancies sharing their phases of engagement in the chat, we'd love to see what you've been up to. I'll just give you a couple more moments to finish yours off.
Well, life is tricky.
Okay, welcome back. So step 2, we're going to talk about the user experience. So this is the step-by-step experience of the service from the perspective of people using it. And it's broken down into what the user is doing and feeling. So when I say user, I really just mean people, beneficiaries, or even staff, volunteers. So here you can see we've broken it down into the experience and the feeling in the orange. And I like to pop in some icons when I make my first user experience map. I copy and paste them from a website called the Noun Project, or you can just Google the icon you're looking for, or doodle it even. So in this example, you'll see that the beneficiary receives an invite to the cafe with a visual plan. They confirm their attendance, watch the Zoom tutorial, think of a warm memory of the face-to-face cafe, check the Zoom link is working, prepare a mug of tea or coffee ready for the cafe, join the room, hold their warm mug and see everyone in the room, check in and share how they're doing today, draw a warm memory of the cafe, share warm memories of the cafe out loud, and then share ideas for next week's activity. And then they're invited to pin their warm memory sketch up in their home. So super simple example here, just to illustrate how you might map out the user experience. So in line with the phases of engagement, what would the user experience be on your map? Again, I'll give you another couple of minutes to have a go at this.
Brothers and sisters, lend me your ears. Listen to my story of love and death. I fell deep in love with a a girl of my dreams. You see what I mean? On our wedding day, she gave me a kiss with tears in her eyes. It was a kiss of death.
So I'll just give you another couple of moments with this. Stacey's saying it may take some time and some help from colleagues is needed. You might be feeling the same. Really encourage you just to have a first stab, see what you think, and then that can be a starting point or a conversation starter. You can say to colleagues, this is what I was thinking, what am I missing? And then you've got a first draft.
The my grave. It's just the same.
Okay, welcome back. So, step 3, touch points. Remember, it doesn't need to be perfect today. And this is just a really whistle-stop tour through the tool. So the touch points are the key documents and products or resources that your beneficiaries or people come into contact with as part of their service experience. So here it is on the template in orange. And here's what we mapped for the Magic Memories Cafe. It's in pink. So you'll see that all of these touch points are fairly lo-fi for this service. They're emails, they're paper-based. They may be using the functionality that exists within Zoom. And the touch points on your service might be much more busy. Make sure to break it down and be specific. So avoid just referring to the website. Talk about exactly where your beneficiaries will be on the website. So the homepage, is it a chatbot? Is it the FAQs? Is it a web app? Etc. when you are mapping your touch points. So I think for time, we will have to skip over this one for now, but have a think in your own time about the touch points. What are the touch points on your map? And I'm just going to talk really briefly about some of the assumptions that were surfaced once we tested this live, just to kind of ground Louise's training from last week. What I would say is it's best that you try and predict these assumptions before you test it with people, rather than find them out at the time. But some of the assumptions that we came up with once we looked at this and really gave ourselves the permission to think about what we were assuming was that a Zoom tutorial would be enough to support people to engage. It definitely wasn't in the end. The group were already well formed. They weren't well formed in the end, which impacted the kind of the flow of the session. The group will want to draw their memory on paper. A lot of them didn't really fancy drawing. They just wanted to talk about their memory instead. The group will feel comfortable to share, etc., etc., etc. So you can see this is a really good way of surfacing those assumptions and kind of breaking things off and testing them, so that you create a really nice, smooth experience for people, and that they want to come back for. So that's the end of the demo. So that was the engagement phases, the user experience and the touch points. And that's really where you want to spend your most time. Get those right and the rest of it will flow. And for that reason, we're going to pause the demo and just run through the final stages in overview. If anybody fancies sharing what they've done so far, that'd be great. But I'll just whip through the final stages. So we've got the front stage actions, and that's the activities or the interactions carried out by people providing the service. So often practitioners, staff, volunteers, or even technology. And these are visible to the user. So you can see that is in orange here. And then finally, we've got the backstage action. So that's everything that happens behind the scenes, behind the curtain, to support the front stage that are invisible to the user. So here it is in purple at the bottom. That might be a reporting system, a log, kind of your software updates, all sorts of things. So a journey map is really useful for all these things, allowing people to see the service as a whole, for people to see how their role relates to each other, to review areas for development, for communicating things to funders, and to get people excited. So if you're going to do this for your service, I really advocate for a sort of test and learn approach. So complete your first draft and post-its. Notice if there are assumptions, gaps or bumps, and then break those things down and test them with real people. then tweak or continue, stop or rethink based on what's coming up, and just keep revisiting and updating it really. You might need to go back a step and test some elements of your service, and that's okay. So I'll just pause here for some questions. I could probably take 1 or 2 questions before I just talk about how to sustain this approach into launch.
Hi Rebecca, I can't put my camera on, but I'm just going to field some of the questions that have come in from Stacey and Susan in the Q&A. So Stacey's asked about tips for working through this as a team kind of remotely. So I guess in a way that you can't sit in a room and work through it on a template together.
Yeah. Depending on whether or not you're comfortable using Miro or an online whiteboard, that can be really good. So just mocking it up yourself or together with a colleague, and inviting everybody to the Miro board and working through each stage one by one. Are we right with these phases of engagement? What's missing? How can we improve? What are we assuming? Are we right with the user experience? What's missing? What are we assuming? Etc. etc. Yeah, so that can be a really good way to collaborate with people, or any other kind of cloud-based tools that you use. Could just use a Word document that everybody can kind of see and comment on. Any way to visually show kind of how you've mapped out the user journey and get feedback on it is great.
Thank you. And then a bit more of a like specific technical question from Susan, which was about the user feeling that you talked through. And Susan would like to know if we're aiming to follow the kind of the rise and fall of the line.
Oh, good question. So that was just an example of people's emotional journey. So your journey would look different if you were to mock this up. And what you're aiming for really is as little ups and downs as possible. So as little gap between the highs and the lows. So like, it's fine for people to have highs and lows over your service. It's natural. But if you can try and sort of, you know, squash the line as you kind of head into implementation, then that's what you're aiming for. And again, test that with people, like, are we right? Is this where you would be feeling great? And this is where you'd be feeling not so great.
Amazing. Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay, so hopefully we can pick up a couple more towards the end as well. If not, I shall make sure that we get back to people after the session.
Right.
So if you want to create a non-linear map, there's a few ways of doing it. You can sort of cluster people's kind of experience across the journey into different activities. You can think of a different shape, or you can even use an analogy, so like a shop floor or a life cycle. This was inspired by me seeing some frog spawn yesterday. But yeah, you can think differently about it being linear if that doesn't suit your service. Oh, that was a bit of a whistle stop, wasn't it? So I'm going to invite us to just take a pause for a minute. Take a deep breath in for a second. And look at this nice bit of ocean. A nice deep breaths in for 5 and then out for 5. Whilst our brain tries to process all of that new information. So next I'm going to talk about my general road mapping top tips, and then I'll talk about sustaining a design mindset into launch. So we'll start with road mapping top tips. There are 5 of them. And we'll start with hold your plans lightly. So this is a lovely quote from a jazz musician. And they say, control is for beginners. Give people the space to take calculated risks, learn, apply, iterate, or risk your future. In our push for perfection, we over-engineer. We add so many bells and whistles that it should take a PhD to use a product. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Second is work in the open. So we use Miro scrapbooks at Shift to track and show our progress, to show to the rest of the team and to our clients, and it really helps to build trust and a sense of team. And Teo, the innovation director at Shift, says this: work in the open. I was working in the dark for so long. When I started working in the light, amazing things happened. So don't be scared to show your workings out. It can be really transformational to show people you're behind the scenes. test with real people. So have a think about who your real people might be. Who's using your thing? Who's delivering your thing? Who's paying for your thing? And crucially, who's got the power to stop the thing if they wanted to? Who are those people? Make sure that you get good feedback from those people before you invest in launch or implementing your new service. Start small. So here's a great example of how Action for Children created their MVP site parent talk. So they created it just over a weekend on a Squarespace template, and over a few months developed it in a really rapid, agile way, such that they were able to launch it in August. And this is an example of a Facebook Messenger chatbot for a wellbeing project for Lambeth Council. Again, we just developed this in 2 weeks, created a little character, created a few different flows in the chatbot software, and tested it with parents as soon as we could, just to see if it was a goer. And finally, use what's there. So there are so many brilliant resources available to you. So here's a big list. There'll be clickable links in the slides just after this talk, but the digital candle is free expert advice. Service recipes are kind of tried and tested ways of doing digital stuff that a load of charities have contributed, and so on and so forth. So have a look at those, because there's some brilliant resources there for you. And then finally, just wanted to talk about mindsets and sustaining a design approach into launch, because it's important to remember that design is as much of a mindset as it is the practical tools. So be open to change. Well, we've all had to embrace this over the last year, right? But it's really vital now more than ever. So we might have had a great idea now, but is it still going to be relevant in 6 months' time? So again, we really just want to make sure that we're not making a wonky horse, and making sure that we're keeping our mind open to changing the idea, keeping things relevant, responding to what's really happening, both in terms of government restrictions, but also in people's lives and with your service landscape as well. Know what you don't know. So this is a framework that I really, really like and helps me when I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed or underconfident. So some ideas are really easy to launch straight to market without too much testing. So these are the paint by numbers kind of ideas. You don't really need to use a design process for these. In other cases, you might not be clear on much at all, the goal or how you'll do it, or the audience. So that in that case, you'll need to go back to your research phase, or really kind of small scale testing, really quick testing. So that might be lost in the fog, and in here a bit of a design process and design thinking is really essential. So also a really great mindset is reminding yourself and the team of what the brief is, and asking yourself, what is the brief? What is our brief? So each organisation will brief or commission work really differently. I don't have a brief template for you because everyone's different, but these questions might help to get clear before taking things to the next stage. So who are you designing for? Why are you designing it? What are you designing? Is it a strategy, a team, a network, a journey, a product? How will you get started? When does each step need to happen? And where will you get the support that you need? Whoops. So this is my philosophy in life generally, but I invite you to take note of it as we begin opening up our services, and things change quite a lot over the next few months. And it's a quote from Audre Lorde, and she says, "Your no makes the way for your yes." Being able to say no makes yes a choice. And really ask yourself, does your plan meet the current and upcoming needs of your most vulnerable users or seldom heard users? Does it align with your organisational priorities? Are you a bit stuck on an idea that was relevant in March but might not be as relevant now? It's okay to say no. It's okay to put things on the back burner. It's not just okay to, it's right to as well at the moment. Finally, and most importantly, is looking after yourself and your team. Is so important that we prioritise our mental and physical health right now. We've just had one hell of a year, and it's been really hard to put ourselves first. But do know that you can be a generous and a caring person while setting healthy boundaries. So here are some good resources for supporting your team's wellness, should you need. So lastly, I just wanted to end with a massive thank you. It's been quite a year, but you're still here, willing to learn, willing to strive for your beneficiaries, for your colleagues, for your organisation, for yourself. We know it can be lonely. I know from personal experience working in charities that it can be frustrating to innovate, try new things and adapt. But do keep connecting with each other on meetups like these, and follow us at join_beyond on Twitter. There's lots more training and networking opportunities coming up for charities like yours. And I think that's me. So I'll pass back to Amelia, who might have a couple more questions and some reminders of what's coming up next.
I have actually, Rebecca, there's 2 questions for you. I'm going to try and squeeze them both in if that's okay.
Of course.
One of them from Anonymous, so who knows, one of you guys has asked if you have different users and therefore different user journeys, would trying to merge and put those all onto one sheet be too ambitious a task?
Probably. I'd have a go at mapping, kind of like trying to cluster your users into groups, and really define what their needs are, what makes them different from each other, and how the service is delivered differently to them. So kind of take a step back from the user journey, define the user, define the service, and then multiple user journeys is probably going to be right for that, and then see what comes up.
Great. And then Sadaf, who's one of our regular viewers, I can't believe I can say that, has said to us, as time goes on, the questions asked for user journeys change. And so then like the data points or the reference points become different in comparison with like other user journeys. So you can't compare them in the same way. How might you navigate that like change in points of reference or change in questions that might be asked for the user journeys?
I'm not sure if I fully understand the question.
So
do you understand the question?
I'm going to
Amelia?
interpret.
Can you explain it to me?
Please put in the chat if this this isn't the right thing. But I think the idea is that as time goes on and a product changes or an idea grows, the questions asked for a user journey become different, and so then you don't have the same answers for yourself to compare to design completely different user journeys.
Mm-hmm.
So then how would you navigate having different points of data, but wanting to compare them with previous user journeys to see what the differences are? Sadaf? Oh yeah.
Well, I think I just keep multiple versions. So rather than like continuing to update on the same one, have version control. Mm-hmm. As things progress and iterate over time. I think that's probably my best piece of advice. Would you say anything, Amelia, to add to that?
I'm trying to think through what I would normally do here, and I think I always compare back to other user journeys, but I never try and repeat or completely. Those of you that don't know, I also work with Rebecca in the shift team. I also, I think, don't try to completely replicate. So it's interesting to look back on previous ones, but always have new versions. Because new information means that you need to shift your assumptions, and so previous ones might be based on previous assumptions.
Definitely. Yeah, and be really open to like completely rethinking the phases of engagement, for instance, because they might have completely changed, and you can get quite stuck and set on a format or a formula or a framework that you were using before. But yeah, do come back to it with fresh eyes, and get other people's fresh eyes on it as well, as things progress.
Thanks, Rebecca. We've got 3 minutes left, and I've actually got absolutely loads to tell these guys. So I'm going to say,
please,
to you,
share the word.
I am posting in the chat. Wow, I can't believe this is our very last session. I'm posting in the chat, as I do every week, a link to our feedback form. I know that we ask you to feedback every week. It's really important to us because we've made some big changes as the course has gone on. Like, you guys told us that you wanted it to be a bit slower, and I'm hoping that we've given some more time for pause and a little bit more time for information to sink in. So it's been really helpful for us. So thank you in advance for anyone that does manage to fill in that feedback form. It really makes a difference to what we offer. I want to say a huge thank you, obviously, to Rebecca for hosting us so beautifully and calmly. I always feel really peaceful after listening to your radio voice, Rebecca, so thank you for doing that. I also want to say a huge thank you to all of you attendees for joining us, because you've been amazing. You've really joined in and shared your ideas and learnings and thoughts on the chat, so we've appreciated being on this journey with you. A reminder that the blog at joinbeyond.org/blog will have all the templates, all the recordings and all the slides from every single one of these design thinking sessions, so you'll be able to get there and have a look at them all. And then just want to tell you a little bit about the next few weeks, because we've got some courses or like workshops that run on really well from this design thinking course, and I think would be amazing for some of you. So the design thinking course is finished, but Beyond hasn't, and there's huge amounts of things coming up. But specifically, we have something called Equity by Design, which is by an organisation called Rooted by Design, who are an amazing Black-owned and Black-led design agency who really work to help you understand how you might equalise opportunities and equalise access to your services and the support that you offer by design. So thinking about it through the whole design process. So I know a lot of you resonated with something that Fan said earlier on in the user research session, which was about your people aren't hard to reach, your services are. And that session is all about trying to think about how you can make your services less hard to reach. And then we've got prototyping, which is all about digital prototypes. If any of you've got any ideas that you've been thinking about during these 5 sessions that are digital, so websites or apps or services online, we've got some sessions literally just to help you go through a workshop and create some prototypes that you can go out and test. So really, really practical, and we'd love to see some of you there. I think that's absolutely everything from us on the Beyond team today. A huge thank you for attending as always, and we will hopefully see you on a different course. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.